Good morning and welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. This morning, as I always say each Wednesday morning, we want to keep our FCC license, so we won't talk about politicians this morning, or the big boys will come down and coach Jim and you and I off, Mrs. Busby. Let's get right down to serious business. We always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo or two, and I'm always mean these things sincerely. It's not just a piece of thing we do. I really mean to let people know we appreciate the things that are going on in the county. This morning it's a little different, Judith and listeners. And you too, Jim, while you're standing there with the controls, Duran. We have with us this morning a gentleman who represents an era, the military era, and a social era in our country, the Vietnam War times. Vietnam was a war that should have obviously never happened. Some terrible things happened in that war. We came up with a product called Agent Orange, the purpose of which, as I briefly understand it, was to defoliate foliage over there so that people could see better. Is that essentially correct, Mr. Schaler?
Absolutely.
And the byproduct of Agent Orange is a lot of our boys were seriously injured and or killed with Agent Orange. Joe's a good example. He came home and he was a victim of Agent Orange, and his daily health is not what you and I would enjoy. Even we old people like you and I, Mrs. Busby, enjoy better health than younger guys. And I'm serious about this. That came home with Agent Orange problems. Joe's here with us this morning. I'm going to let Mrs. Busby do an official introduction because I just about stepped on her line, Jim. Mrs. Busby, did you want to introduce her?
Is it my turn?
It's your turn. We draw straws up here.
In real life, we're very happy to have with us today Joe Schaler, Logan County Veterans Assistance Commission. And I'm sure that was, war is hell. Who was the famous person who coined that phrase?
Long before.
It's been repeated many times since, I know. And this one was especially so because it was replayed on the 6 o'clock news every day in your home, so you really knew what these fellows were over there fighting. It was a terrible thing. Yeah. I had a brother who was in Vietnam, and it affected him. It did. And I think it did most of those young people. Yeah. You young people. Yeah. Now you're not as young as you were, are you?
No, I'm not.
Not so much, Joe. But you come back here and you're helping the other veterans. And let's talk about some of the services that are available to them to make their life better on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Well, we have an office down there. Joe wants to tell about that. That does a lot for veterans. And before he starts, I just want to say that Joe Schaler is kind of the moving force behind getting that office established down there on the McLean Street near the...
Across from the library.
Yeah, right across from the library in Latham Park. Mr. Schaler, it was his efforts pushing and shoving and maybe a bad word or two, and he finally got the job done.
If he didn't say him, he maybe thought him anyway.
Down there. That office does a lot of good, so we're going to pass the baton to Mr. Schaler and tell us about what that office is for and who it serves. Joe.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. It's always an honor to talk about our Veterans Assistance Commission, and I was one of a number of people who worked very hard over a period of probably a year of trying to do everything from understanding the law that would create a Veterans Assistance Commission, how it had to be funded, who should be a superintendent, and I'm I'm always kind of fond of March 16th each year as an anniversary because we're coming up on our 6th anniversary in a week or so of when the levy was passed to fund it, which was kind of the last piece to get it in place. And then that summer, after a number of different interviews with candidates, we hired Dan Benedict to be our superintendent. And Dan's had it, of course, for 6 years of being there, and he's really done an amazing job of taking something that was not there and molding it into a very great service organization in the county. And I think that he has, in about a 5-year period of time, by the time he was certified to be a service officer, he's provided about $1 million worth of benefits back to Logan County. And that's not a small thing.
No,
to
not
say,
at all.
of tax-free dollars coming in, and more importantly, what it's doing for those veterans receiving those benefits and their families. And we have tried to create a commission that is providing as many services as possible to our veterans here. And besides the awesome ability to file claims and prosecute those claims and provide those benefits, we've added a dental benefit that we will pay for 2 cleanings and x-rays a year. We cover that. We have agreements with SIU to do that. We have an agreement with SIU and Memorial Hospital to provide mental health counseling. We work with the vet centers. They come down, provide counseling. All this is free of charge for our veterans. And we have another group operating out of the Marine Corps League that they offer what I will refer to as mobility. In other words, they'll put up ramps, provide scooters, wheelchairs, walkers, anything you can, elevators, lifts. That's kind of been an outgrowth of all this also. And the last part of this ongoing campaign to increase benefits is one of the outgrowths has been the Central Illinois Veterans Commission to provide permanent housing. So we just continue to try to march this down the field. And we, look at this as trying to make Logan County a great place for a veteran to live and provide benefits for them. So ultimately, we may have a few more veterans decide this is a good place to live, raise their family, and contribute to Logan County. So we're a little bit proud about the direction we've been going with this. So it's been a long march, but it's been fruitful.
Well, a lot of people make a long march, but it doesn't end up as successfully as yours has. And thank goodness, because there are a lot of people who've been depending on you for one thing and the next. You mentioned that there's mental health help for the veterans.
Yeah.
That's something I think that as a society we're becoming more and more aware of, and we talk about it in so many areas of our society.
Yeah.
And for instance, now they're talking about it with the children and the business of the school closings and so forth, and what that's done to some kids is just kind of thrown them for a loop.
Yeah.
So this is very important to people who need that service, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think probably there are a number of long-term illnesses, and if we go back to the Vietnam era, that whether it's cancer or diabetes or high blood pressure, but everyone in response to your first comment about your brother being in Vietnam and how it affected him. It's pretty fair to say that there was nobody that actually was in country in Vietnam that didn't come home with some type of a mental impact from that. And so much of that, as our psychologists and our psychiatrists have learned over the last half century, took a lot of time for that to unfold and make itself known. Unfortunately for a lot of us, I mean, I was 19 years old when I came home, and I couldn't figure out why the rest of the world had changed and what was wrong with it when I got home. Nobody was thinking about PTSD or anything. That wasn't even a phrase then. You had shell shock or battle fatigue or whatever, and even that was not really a good term that they were trying to use. But the mental health aspect of what we need to provide veterans across the board. And we have obviously a new generation that the last 30 years with Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, we have millions of those that have now been impacted by that. So it's and it trails over to the families because they're trying to deal with this. Who is this person? This isn't the same man or woman that left here. And it's not something that they just, okay, let's just let them rest and have some. That's not going to take care of it. They need help. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't realize it until decades later. And so I guess my hope is that we can address that earlier. And I don't, I'm not the poster child for that, but I will tell people, I say, I still go to a VA therapist, and it took a long time to find one I could talk to. Years. And there's things now that I talk about that I should have been talking about 50 years ago. And I don't want our younger veterans to have to go 30 or 40 or 50 years before all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and it's like, it's not them, it's been me. And I just hope, besides the physical cures that we try to come up with, that we can work on the emotional side of it also.
648. Let's go ahead, Judith K.
No.
648-5510. Our guest this morning, Mr. Joe Schaler. I want you to think about this for a minute, folks. Joe's a Vietnam veteran, and he came home from service at Vietnam, as they call in country over there. I think that's a general expression. Am I correct, Joe?
Yeah.
At the age of 19, he was a veteran. Now stop and think about that. I was 18 when I went into the Air Corps. And 3 years later, so I was 21 when I came out. He came out of service at the age of 19, and think about that. And those folks were affected a lot differently than those of my era were. They experienced things that you couldn't begin to fathom in your mind, and you don't want to even think about them. Joe has also been very, very instrumental, and we're going to get on this as soon as the conversation time allows, in our tiny homes for veterans. And we're going to talk about that down the road. But right now, 648-5510. Our guest this morning, Mr. Joe Schaler. Joe, our Danny Benedict is in charge of Veterans Assistance Office there in the old bank building right next to across the street from the library on McLean Street and across the catty corner from Latham Park. Danny was a veteran himself.
Yes.
Air Corps?
He was in the Air Force, retired Air Force, retired as a senior master sergeant, and had a number of deployments along the way. So he understands firsthand the impact that it can have emotionally and physically on you. And that provides a certain amount of empathy when a veteran comes in and has whatever type of medical or emotional issue going on that we need to file a claim on. And I think it sparks a little more of that vigor to make sure it's prosecuted in favor of the veteran, that they get what's coming to them. And he's learned to maneuver the waters of the VA system that is very difficult to do. You have to have a lot of experience to know how to do that correctly. So he's become a pro at it.
Well, that's the name of the game.
Yes.
You have to know what the rules are and how to play.
Absolutely.
Or you're not going to be included.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a positive comment about the veterans hospitals that we have here in Central Illinois, specifically Peoria and Springfield. I've been to both of them just to stay in the system. Nothing particularly wrong. Well, my wife will tell you there's a lot of things wrong with me, but no, seriously. We've all heard comments, derogatory, negative comments about people in the veteran system. I've never had a bad experience in Springfield or Peoria. And it's a personal thing. I've observed that the people are very pleasant, they're very positive, and they make you feel better when you walk out that door. That part of the Veterans Assistance is very positive. And Danny undertakes to cover things that other veterans can't get covered at the veterans hospitals and so forth.
Yeah. And it's, I personally have moved all of my services over to the new Bloomington VA Center. And again, those people there are very personable. And I think when we have an issue with the VA, it's really tends to be on the claim side, because you're not going to meet those people. It's this bureaucracy that you don't see that can make or break a decision on a claim. But when you go into the health facilities, at least here, you have a good experience. Those people care. They're willing to work with you, but it's just when you get into the bureaucracy of it that they tend to seem to lose sight of bringing it down to that individual. How can we help you? They get caught too much in a bureaucracy there. And like most bureaucracies, they're trying to protect their turf. They don't want to look bad. And sometimes I think they spend too much time on PR and not enough time just delivering some services that, when you have a veteran that has we'll go back to a Vietnam veteran that had a claim, let's say because of Agent Orange, and it's clearly marked that this is a covered, and then they deny the claim, or they come back and ask for different information on it, and it's kind of keep kicking the can down the road. That frustration begins to grow, and it doesn't go away.
Well, it's another bureaucracy.
The veteran starts, well, okay, these people are going to wait till I die, and then there's no longer a claim. You're not here anymore. So it's difficult to break that cycle of that mentality, that veterans, that we start getting that callous. And the VA have a long-term project they need to undertake to overcome that and show that they're really here to serve the veteran. And but back to your point, Bill, that Agent Orange, we spent, I can't imagine how much money dumping 40 million gallons of that in Vietnam. And we pretty much polluted that country. We lose sight of the hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese that died afterwards because of that, the hundreds of thousands that had birth defects because of that, and still is in their generations. So the impact they had, we brought that back with us, and we passed it on sometimes to our children, birth defects that took them years to figure out that was going on, and it usually too late to help that child. So when you keep peeling that onion, you really do cry a lot about how much was missed and overlooked and misunderstood, and how much you start feeling that we can't allow that to happen in the future. We can't do that. We need to know going in and how to protect our people when they come home, while they're there, when they come home, and how to care for them. Because war will destroy a person one way or the other. Just the way it is. Yeah.
But in defense of those who formulated Agent Orange and other such type things, you get so excited about what the result can be that sometimes we kind of rush into things, and that happens in the civilian sector just as well as the military.
Yes.
I just read a book called The Real Fauci by Robert Kennedy Jr. Makes you doggone mad at our politicians. I never was sold on him anyway. But to read this book, and he was a charlatan, and probably there ought to be an investigation into Anthony Fauci, and he might well end up in prison somewhere because he was a crook besides a doctor. Interesting terminology how it's devolved down through the years. The guy came home from World War I, and he had what's now called post-traumatic stress disorder, and they called it shell shock. And that was a street common. That was very common.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who walked down the older friend, of course, who walked down the street talking to himself all the time. He was shell shocked.
Yeah.
And they did not have this degree of sophistication of treatment for that disease, and it is the disease.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
So today we've become so much more sophisticated, and we have people, for instance, somebody that you might want to talk with as a counselor, and guide you through a particular of your life. You're trying to have a difficult time. Those people are available, thank goodness.
Yes.
I'm stammering here because I want to be kind. I'm trying to. Bureaucracy is the word that stuck around back there and it wouldn't come out. Bureaucrats are a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. You.
I didn't get any telephone calls on that.
Yeah. Well, I think again when we're dealing, for example, with our counselors that we have available in the county here, they drill down to the one-on-one experience, and they want to know where that veteran is, or they may be there with their spouse. You know, both of them trying to work through this, and you get away from the bureaucracy and it becomes personal then, and that's what you need. And it takes generally a while to develop that relationship and that comfort zone where you're willing to go out and say some things and start moving into an area. And there's only so many questions they can ask in trying to probe through that. And at some point they need the veteran to kind of eventually break down that wall and start being able to trust somebody. And when I say trust them, it's almost the fact that veterans trying to trust themselves to be able to speak out loud that this happened, or why do I feel this way, or why do I always feel this way in public, and that. Because you're kind of saying, I think there's something wrong with me. I don't know what is wrong with me. And that takes a lot of trust to build that up with a counselor before you're usually willing to say that. And then it just goes beyond that, depending on how long it's been, that you could have a whole boatload of things at that point that just start dumping out. And some of it you can't fix because it's happened, it's over with. But you just want to make sure going forward you have a better handle on things, and sometimes that's as good as it's going to get. You just try to make better choices going forward.
648-5510. Once again, we're halfway into the program, and we forget that in order to put these programs on, we have to have sponsors. Our guest this morning, Joe Schaler, 648-5510. Think about a question or two you might want to ask Joe. He's experienced some things none of us want to even know about. Right back live in the studios here at WLCN. The program, of course, is Viewpoint, appearing each Wednesday morning at 0815 to 0900 hours. Bringing guests that are important to you and yours in the community. Today, and I want to be kind of careful about this, but I have a deep and abiding respect for our guests this morning. And I thought it was time that we talk to Judith and I talk about our guests and try to bring people of interest to each Wednesday today. But Joe Schaler is with us today, representing the Illinois Veterans Commission. And more importantly, on a direct basis, we just completed a house called a tiny house. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Joe because he has something he might want to talk about. Go right ahead, Mr. Schaler.
Thank you. Well, we're going to begin the second home. We're planning on the first weekend of April to be able to get the walls up and the roof on. So we're going to, on our website, which is civeteran.org, we're going to start putting out a little bit of a countdown and try to provide a place for those who want to volunteer so they can kind of let us know who they are and how to contact them. But if all goes well, that first weekend of April, by that Sunday afternoon, we should have the roof on and the sides on the home and ready for the subcontractors to get in there that week and start putting in the HVAC and electrical and kind of move forward with that. So we're two things that drive this is that it takes a lot of volunteers, a lot of planning, and it takes money to do that. So we're just constantly working on that. And I just dropped off 150 or more boards to all the county schools for the kids to be signing the 2x4s again, and to Eaton Corporation, several churches, Lincoln College next week will be signing boards. So.
Mr. Schaler, we have a caller. If you'll grab your headset, sir, so you'll be able to hear the caller. And just to check it now, let him go right ahead, please, caller.
My name is Doris Last. I am from Hartsburg. And about 2 years ago, my second son, Lauren Last, was found dead in his home in McLean, had to have an autopsy and be cremated. And later, when we spoke to the Hartsburg Cemetery Association about burying him, they said because his father was in a vault, he could be buried right on top of him at no charge to the cemetery. And your office there on McLean Street made him the most beautiful flat concrete marker with all the information on it that we would have put if we had bought a marker for him, and you charged us nothing, not even the postage to have it brought to Dale Eaton at Hartsburg, who does all of the digging work out there. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Gosh, that makes me feel good.
And we say thank you.
Thank you, madam, for call it. We appreciate that information. Isn't it neat to hear something positive like that?
Yeah.
And those little things happen all the time out there, but we don't know about them at all.
Yeah.
So it's really great. So 648-5510. Somebody else might have another positive experience. And if you've had a disappointment, this is testing 1, 2.
Yeah.
Where was I before I so rudely interrupted myself? If you have had an experience that's not positive and would like to talk about it, we can take that. So go right at 648-5510. Our guest this morning, a guy, if you see him around the courthouse square, don't look up at all the work's going around there. Walk up to him and shake his hand and thank him. Joe Schaler. Go right ahead, Mr. Schaler.
I just want to pass along a couple of things. March 29th is Vietnam Veterans Day.
Oh.
And it was designated by President Obama 4 or 5 years ago, I guess.
That may be one of the best things he ever did.
But this March 29th, the Illinois Department of Veteran Affairs, they're going to have their first ceremony in 2 years. They shut down everything, of course, 2 years ago. So their first ceremony, they are going to do this in Lincoln on the 29th at 6 o'clock at the Legion. We're going to be hosting the Vietnam Veterans Pinning Ceremony. So we'll have our director there. There'll be a number of officials from the Department of Veteran Affairs there, and we're putting together a very fitting and honorable ceremony right now. It'll begin at 6 o'clock on the 29th at the Legion. So it's the IDVA's first outing in 2 years, and we've been chosen to host this, so we're going to make it special, and we're going to make them glad that they chose Lincoln once again for this ceremony. And then if we jump to April 23rd at West Lincoln Broadwell. Marcia Fernandez, who puts the fun in fundraising, is hosting the Hoops for Heroes again. She did this last year, and it's the county police and firemen playing the West Lincoln Broadwell kids and basketball games as a fundraiser. And she did an awesome job with this last year in the middle of COVID. So she's doing it again, April 23rd. That's a Saturday that evening. And we'll have more details coming out on that as it gets closer. But she does an awesome job of fundraising for us. We wouldn't be where we're at without her.
Besides that, she's got the best-looking 2 grandchildren I ever saw.
Yeah, she's got a couple of good-looking.
Seriously,
yeah.
Boy, I mean, seriously, those are handsome children.
Yeah.
Marcia, and by the way, she's a great deal of help to us out there at the Christian Village with the veterans. Marine Corps League. Yeah. They've been very, very helpful to us out there. I'm a flag guy, and I'm deeply involved in that emotionally. Yeah. If there's anybody that has any flag problems out there, their flags flying or damaged or wind damaged or anything, Marine Corps League will step up and take care of them.
Takes care of them.
Which reminds me of another thing that the American Legion does is retirement of damaged and worn out flags. So let's just talk about that for a minute, Mr. Schaler, because it's a nice little tribute to our flag.
Absolutely, yeah. They have done that for forever.
Years. Yes.
And a couple of times a year we have so many flags that are dropped off there, which is good because that means new ones have been put up. And a couple of times a year we'll have a ceremony there to retire those flags with dignity. So yes, you can drop those flags off at Legion, you can drop them off at the VFW on 5th Street, or you can bring them into the VAC office. We have a drop inside the office there, a container to put them in. And And I've been known to pick up flags for somebody's called me, and I've driven by and picked them up. And just a side note to that, if I may, those flags you see around the courthouse square, predominantly along the Kickapoo and across Pulaski there. Kathy Williams at Small Town Creations, her and her husband, they replace those flags.
They do.
And they get rid. I've picked up the worn out ones from them, but that's one of their little missions among many things they do for veterans, is to replace those flags. So we have some things we've talked about doing in the future, particularly with the restoration of the courthouse, that we may try to undertake, certainly before 2026, when it's the 100th anniversary of Route 66. So we have some things we may expand on that in the future, but those two do a great job behind the scenes of keeping those flags flying.
I'm glad you brought up the subject of the appropriate retirement for flags, because I think everybody knows in some little spot in their mind that you're not supposed to put it in the garbage.
No.
That's just wrong.
Right.
But they don't know what the alternative is either.
Yeah.
And it's important that you disseminate that information.
Yeah, it is, and some way, somehow or another, if you need to, call. Yeah, we'll come and get it if we have to, but let's properly dispose of them. Yes.
And it's a short ceremony, but it's a very dignified ceremony that they conduct. They always do it very nicely, very appropriately out there at the Legion, and that day needs to be marked so that people go and support that.
Yeah, and we did the Marine Corps League did a ceremony, I think, a year or so ago at Christian Village, of retiring flags there, and there's a proper way to do it, and we try to at times involve the scouts, let them see and let them participate in it, so you have a way of passing this down from one generation to the next of how to dispose of these flags and the dignity of the flag.
Joe, if a listener out there has a veteran in their family who's having some problems, that they're just kind of frustrated, they don't know what to do, what would your advice be?
Well, it'd be, first off, to call the VAC office and talk to Dan. Let them
Dan Benedict.
Yeah, Dan Benedict. Let them know what the issue is. And Dan has the experience and the contacts to know whether they should come in there or to route them to someone else to get this issue taken care of. So that's always going to be the first thing, is to call the VAC office and talk to Dan Benedict, and or come in, schedule an appointment, and take it so he has the time to spend with you to go through it with you.
Now, we had a state representative who was very helpful to us, always worked on issues. Somebody came to him with a problem or so, but he's been taken out of our district because of gerrymandering.
Yeah.
We've lost Tim Butler. We want to snap a salute in his direction as he wanders off into the western sunset.
Yeah.
But I'm frank to tell you, I'm sure I can't sit here right now and tell you who our new state representative is.
Well, we won't know that until January 13th of next year when they're sworn in. But I can say that Sally Turner's office has jumped in with both feet since she's been appointed. And of course, she's
going to be
running
a great state senator.
Yeah, she's running for office now as our state senator, and her team have been awesome in things that they've done in providing assistance, not only to help the VAC and the Tiny Home Project, but looking at state veterans and trying to get some legislation in force or get things that are already on the books actually done. So instead of just putting it on the books and then we don't fund it, you got to put the two of them together. So,
Joe, we have less than 60 seconds. Tell us to finish up about tiny homes before we sign off.
yeah. First weekend of April, we're looking at building, and hopefully in May we'll build the next home.
That's on the
after
corner of
that.
6th and College.
6th and College, yes.
That property was donated to us by Haji Patel,
Yeah.
Famous Liquors. There's a little quick commercial you got, Haji.
Yeah, Melva
We
Green.
appreciate that. But that's a date. That's a date to remember. To come and see what a tiny home is and how it benefits. Joe Schaler, we appreciate your taking your time with us this morning.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate what you do.
Yeah, it's
Thank you,
awesome
sir.
to be here with you.
I give you a salute, but I break my arm.
Well, I tell people I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for people like Bill Gossett. So I'm
Mrs.
grateful to
Busby.
be here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep.